the reason why I think why happiness is important is because of this concept of reinforcement, which is a technical term that is in ADHD, which really translates into love, happiness, pleasure, any sorts of things. And that's important because we behave in a way that, it's not challenging behavior, but we generally just move, right? We move only because there is some happy thing, pleasurable thing, right? There are something that we really want to do to improve our quality of life, right? So if no matter where you are, whether you are a baby or a school-age kid or adults, if you really want to build a foundation of your life, that's where you have to start. You have to start building your life based on what makes you happy and what makes your life pleasurable and improve the quality of life.
Well, right there, that's kind of a mind bend for me, because I remember during the years of ABA, ABA was like gold, our time with a BCBA and an ABA, and we just filled it with tasks. And they were tasks that the parents thought would be good, or tasks that the teachers thought that would be good, but they were tasks. I didn't see it based around the joy or happiness as a motivation. Are you saying that happiness is a better motivation?
Yeah, happiness is the motivation, right? Because if you think about, when you think about whatever we do, right? Whatever we do, we really do in order to achieve some kind of happiness, some kind of love, right? Whether it's a very immediate one, right? If you just talk to somebody you love, that's a very immediate type of pleasure. But if you want to maintain a long-term relationship with somebody, right, that's a very higher order type of love, right? And that's really why we do what we do. And it's kind of unfortunate that ABA is has that stereotype of sitting at the table and doing matching to sample and and that type of thing, because that's really a very it's like a fragment of what ABA is. And the only reason why we do that is to achieve some kind of happiness. And people forget about that all the time, because you're focusing too much on any tasks, right? So whether it's a matching to sample, or whether it's washing hands, or whether it's some kind of social skills, you forget that we are doing it for some reasons, and that reason is happiness. And if you are an ABA therapist, you really have to have, it doesn't have to be an ABA therapist. If you are, you are trying to help somebody, you really have to think about where is the happiness, where is the love, where is reinforcement? Because without that, one, you cannot motivate anybody to do anything, right? And two, those things become meaningless, right? It doesn't really matter whether you can match object to object or picture to picture, unless you have a goal that, matching may, let's say that you go to a restaurant and be able to match a picture on the menu and then the actual food, right? And that becomes meaningful, because that matching is actually important for you to get some food that you really love, right? And then that becomes meaningful.
So you told me, in the example of my daughter, you asked me, what does she like? And I said, well, she just loves eating muffins, for example. And I said, but that's not a task. We have her sit at the table and do matching. And you you corrected me by saying we can build skills into something that she loves, because it's more of a life skills, and it motivates her more, and it gets into the brain in a different way because it's something that she loves, and at the end she has her reward. So you were explaining to me first you might just back engineer a little bit. She may just put some topper on the muffin, and then the next time she might stir it, and the next time she might do pouring, so more and more skills you build in around something that's based on her happiness.
Right. Yeah. So that's the next step. Once you find what she loves, what anybody loves, and then you can start thinking about, okay, what are the skills that a person needs to obtain that happiness in someone's life. So if it's a muffin, baking a muffin has millions of steps, right? And it can branch out to so many different places, right? So cooking itself is a task, washing dishes is a task, go to shopping to buy the ingredients are the tasks, right? Using money is a task, right? Earning money is a task. So all those things are important skills that a person needs to acquire, but only meaningful when there is a pleasure of eating a muffin. So that's something that you cannot forget. Right? Without that, right, it really it doesn't have any meaning to it. So
well, that's a key too for transition, because what if children are successful in school, meeting their goals at school? How does that translate and transfer, I guess is the word, into real life? Because they're not going to have a team of people at a table sitting around or data taking or anything. So I worry about that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point that you made, and it's not just kids on the spectrum who actually go through it. As anybody goes through it, because that's what that's where the change occurs, right? So when you enter into adulthood, you have to reorganize the life around it. And any kids who loved school, they had friends to play with, and teachers to hang out with, and all that somehow disappears. And then kind of have to transition to whether it's a job or college or some other situations, and you have to reorganize your life around it, right? So that means that you have to find some other ways to achieve the same kind of happiness, same kind of meaning. And that's not easy, because a lot of people, just you and I, have difficulty finding a job that is actually equals to happiness, right? And that's one of the problems that anybody has, right? So like, because everybody says, hey, you have to find the job that you love. Why? Because otherwise you cannot last long. And so it's a lot of people has difficulty with that, and especially people on the spectrum unfortunately have that same issue, because school, well, if you're lucky, school is a pleasurable, happiness place, and they love to go, they love to socialize there, they love to learn new skills. The whole thing was around it, and now that disappears. And then what to do, right? What is it that maintains, right, motivation? And that's what you may want to think about. It could be a job training, it could be community participation, it could be some kind of activities or volunteering, not sure what, but you gotta find that foundation so that you want to wake up in the morning, you want to eat the breakfast, you want to get out of the house, and you want to do all kinds of things. So
you were really seeing our children or people on the spectrum as real humans with likes and dislikes rather than tasks that they must do all the time. Because with behaviors, I think if we incorporate this happiness more, that we might really, we already have frustration of communication. So maybe we're making them do too many things because we think it's right for them, so it's very interesting to remember about their own personal happiness.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good point. I really think that's, I think it is really, well, in my personal opinion is that it's really sometimes toxic to think about progress all the time, whatever the systems that we belong to, any kind of organizations ask about progress, right? What is he or she learning new skills, or being able to do different things, or decreasing behavior, challenging behaviors. And I think it's sometimes toxic because you forget about why, right? You forget about why they have to learn what you ask them to learn, right? And the reason is to achieve happiness in life, right? Just like anybody else. So when you actually focus on training, teaching skills, all that, and then if you forget about all the reasons why we are doing, then it becomes really aversive, right? The whole thing becomes aversive. So you really, I think, we as a practitioner and we as a parent have to really think about that before, asking anybody to do anything. And
so you're saying that that's aversive and can cause more oppositional behavior. Oh gosh, I can think of a lot of things I'm doing wrong.
So I think,
because it's natural for parents to go after that progress. We think if they're going to be a happy adult, then progress is the only thing that counts. And so this is kind of a rethinking of what progress really is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what does the progress mean, right? Mm-hmm. And challenging behavior, for us ABA therapists, and I want everybody to think this way, but challenging behavior is really just a mode of communication, right? So whenever there's a challenging behavior, that person is trying to communicate something important to you. Mm-hmm. So in ABA, when that happens, we try to teach a better way to communicate, right? Instead of hitting himself or screaming, why don't we teach some better communication? We're using words, using pictures, using gestures, so that the communication becomes easier, both for the person who is engaging and people around, right? And so that communication is really about happiness, right? Mm-hmm. Communicating something that he's happy about or unhappy about. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it, it's a communication.
And I remember during my assessment, I kept bringing up things to do during the day, and you would remind me that those are tasks that came from my head, but they weren't pleasurable. So I said, for example, well, going to Target because we'll desensitize her to behaving well in groups. And you said, is that something she likes to do? And I said, no. she likes to go to Safeway and get a pizza. So we redid the outing around something she wanted to do. And I still had tasks in my head. At the grocery store, I wanted to get these 7 things. Well, after getting 3, she used her words and said, go home. And so you were prompting me that that's when you go, okay, great. And we go home. And this, how is that different from spoiling your child or creating a little monster? How is that different? Because some people don't believe in doing it that way.
So spoiling.
So, in other words, just bending to any time they use their words and immediately doing that.
I think the easiest way to think about is whether or not you have a plan, right? So spoiling doesn't have a plan, right? You just listen to whatever they say, and that's probably what people think of spoiling, right? What ABA therapy call functional communication skill or functional communication training is about having a plan, and that starts with granting what a person says or does appropriately. So granting the request when they do it appropriately, right? That's the first step. So, but it's just the first step, right? Because you cannot just give pizza every time a person asks, right? But it's much better than every time person hits himself, right? So first you gotta establish firm communication, appropriate communication, and then after that you can train to discriminate between when it's appropriate, where it's appropriate, what time, how long it takes, right? So those things are the plans that come along. And that's the difference probably between, just spoiling or having a plan.
Well, I was fortunate to know some people that worked with Maria Montessori in the old days in Italy. And she always said her ideal was when children reached 12 or 13, they would no longer be inside walls and inside classrooms for most of the day, that they would be learning outside with their hands and their experiences. What do you think about the brain and learning inside, sitting at a table versus other ways?
Oh, that's a big topic. I think that, I really love that philosophy. And from a ABA therapist point of view, it's really important to do that because of the fact that we cannot make people love what they love, right? That means that we cannot force them to love. Let's say I love movies, right? I love certain type of movie, like a sci-fi I love. I cannot make another person love sci-fi, right? Unless that person has innate, how do I say, disposition to love that sci-fi movie, let's say, right? But there's also a possibility that that person has never been exposed to sci-fi, and then that person might have no idea how good it is, right? So even though we cannot really make people love something, but there is always a possibility that somebody has an innate love for it that they don't know. So what I love about Montessori is what Montessori said was that you have to expose, whether it's in her case, it's a children, but, anybody, you have to expose them to multiple events and activities and, food and anything like that. So they can find something they they discover some love, right? I've never, my girlfriend had never surfed before in her life, but once she came here in Hawaii, and once she started surfing, she loves it like completely, right? And that's, you never knew that before,
Right.
but once she's exposed to it, that became love of her life. And that's something, as a caregiver, as a parent, as a teacher, as a therapist, that's what you have to do, because that's the big section of your life, right? And it's sometimes it's not easy, because some people don't want to be exposed to new things, right?
Mhm.
And then you may have to work around it, especially people on the spectrum. They have difficulty engaging in new skills, new activities. But that part is something that you want to invest, because once you discover something that they love, that changes their life. That becomes their life.
So in these years when we don't know what the future brings for our family members, but in these years where we do have caretakers and one-on-ones or one-on-twos, we should really make an effort for these new exposures, because it seems to me what you're saying is this affects the quality of life of their adulthood. Because
yeah, exactly.
if we don't make the effort to go to all these different places and find out, then their life will be more narrow, because we've never discovered that. So while we have, instead of having everyone do the same old thing every day, that they have a caretaker with them, or a ABA or a BCBA, they should try new things, is what you're saying. We should really work on expanding that experience.
Yeah, as much as possible.
That's a really good idea, because I've seen people rescue autistic people out of a residential home and take them to the ocean, and they were never exposed to the ocean before. And so yes, we have to always be thinking of happiness and experiences, because that forms their adult life. And their childhood is only I think a quarter of their whole life. And we forget that. We put all of our thinking into childhood, but we need to have the plan for the lifespan, as they say. And how do you see things going now from when ABA first started, as a closing question? How do you see ABA evolving, and how do you see the potential of these children growing into adulthood? Do you feel positive about how things are?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, more and more, as more and more people receive early interventions, effective early interventions, their prognosis, of course, are better and looking bright. And at the same time, I think there is a movement of neurodiversity and of course, autism awareness and all that. So I think both sides. So one side is that, yeah, kids with on the spectrum are doing better in terms of adjusting to their environment. And as a society, we are adjusting to them as well.
Right.
So, and I think that's the beauty of it, because ABA is really about interaction between individual and its environment. So that means that both sides can adjust to each other, and then that's where really reinforcement is, which is happiness. So yeah, I can see a very nice, bright future.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us here at Hawaii Autism Foundation. And it's just great to get different points of view to share with parents and teachers. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you.